Hi, my name's Leighton Rudd, and this is my case study on internet use violations. Category 1, first of all, what do I know? I know that Ms. Walker has high standards for her students, and she's not taken the advice of Dr. Forbes to reduce student stress. I also know Ms. Walker received an email which encouraged her to navigate to a website that contained a message for which she interpreted as a threat. I know students and parents complain frequently about Ms. Walker's classroom. I know a distraught Miss Walker has accused Randy Franks of possibly making the threat. I also know Miss Walker plans to return to her family's home 3 hours away because she's frightened. I know Dr. Forbes plans to request Randy Frank come in the following morning to find out maybe what he knows about the case. I know the students come from affluent homes and have access to new technology. I know Dr. Forbes thought it was a prank. I know nothing was mentioned about Dr. Forbes following up on his suggested strategies for Ms. Walker and her teaching methods. What I need to know school policy regarding slander, threats, and at what point I turn this over to the law. I need to know if the email web page was created on a school device or during school time. I need to know what she's been doing to implement stress-reducing strategies in her classroom, she meaning Ms. Walker. The problem is twofold. First, Ms. Walker has managed to upset many students and teachers. As an administrator, I need to discover if she is using best practice to have her students meet her high standards. If not, we need to find a workable solution. The second problem is the threat. Sadly, someone has become so frustrated they have resorted to making a threat. As an administrator, I must discover if school devices were used and if it was created on school time. My plan of action. My first plan is to call Ms. Walker and assist her in constructing a plan for her classroom to help change the climate. First, I would find a place for Ms. Walker to stay that evening so she doesn't have to drive 3 hours to her parents' house. Second, I would gently visit with her about implementing some new techniques in her classroom so the overall climate might change. Apparently, I've suggested this in the future, but now we would together create a workable plan. And third, I would ask for any documentation that she has regarding strategies that I've previously asked her to try. My second plan would be to try to discover where the email web page originated. First, I would ask our district technologist to see what they could discover regarding the email web page. Was school equipment used and was it done on school time? Secondly, if the technologists are unable to locate the information, I would possibly hire an outside source to discover the information. Upon discovery, I would discipline the student if it was a student or students according to district policy. If it was an adult not enrolled in my district, I would turn it over to the law. And lastly, I don't think I would immediately question Randy Franks the next morning. Ms. Walker was obviously in a panic, frightened state and could have just thrown a general name out, and sometimes false accusations can get us in more trouble. My third plan would be to review local policy. First of all, I would preview the policy I would review the classroom instruction and expectations regarding teaching. A main goal of mine would be to get Ms. Walker to improve her classroom climate while allowing her to maintain those high standards. I would also review the policy on slander and threats to see if it needs cleaned up or cleared up. Does the policy provide a safe environment for all students? And then upon reviewing the policies, I would make necessary changes to ensure this does not happen again and promote our safe school environment. Resolving the issues based on promoting the success of all students. My first plan, creating a climate improvement for Ms. Walker or assisting her in doing that, obviously promotes the success of all students by not lowering the standards, just making a few changes to increase the student morale, maybe how the students view and feel her. Hopefully it's not too late to make those changes. The second plan would promote the success of all students by discovering where and how the email page was created, the web page, excuse me. This might avoid us having to question students immediately. I feel that Ms. Walker may have been extremely upset and she just threw out a name without thinking things through. I think we need to avoid the accusations and let the tech gurus find the answers for us. That, for me, would be promoting student success rather than beginning to tear down individual students. The third plan would promote success of students by reviewing the policy, tidying up the words, cleaning it up. Let's face it, certain situations arise and it forces us to tweak policy. It's always best to revisit policy and make sure things are worded correctly to promote success for all students. I'm not speaking just student policy, but personnel as well. What was I thinking? Well, the first thing is I became concerned with the legal system. Since this is a threat, do I immediately turn it over to the law and let them deal with that portion of the problem? Or do I, as an do an internal investigation to see what turns up? I'm kind of a control freak, and I felt it necessary for me to do a little legwork. So that's why the first plan for me was to have our technology staff see what they could find out. My second thought regarding this case was, why was the 3-day weekend mentioned? Did I miss something? Was there a reason that time was mentioned, or was it just added info? I didn't know. Sometimes I read too much into things, but that one got me thinking. And lastly, I thought it was misleading of Dr. Forbes to ask for names of possible suspects. In a frazzled state, Ms. Walker may not have been thinking clearly, and this wasn't necessarily an ethical move. I felt it could lead to worsen the situation. What was I feeling? Well, initially when I read this case, I honestly felt irritated with Ms. Walker because things were allowed to escalate to this point. I realized she is the victim in this scenario, but I felt as if there must be some change regarding her classroom climate in order to prevent more of these types of situations. Secondly, I did feel that there was more than one problem. The overall problem was that someone had made a perceived threat. However, lack of follow-through in the leadership department contributed to the ongoing frustration with Ms. Walker. I felt this may have been avoided if Dr. Forbes had maybe followed through with some of his suggestions. And lastly, I felt it was not in the best interest of the students to ask Ms. Walker if she thought any of them had been responsible. She was not in a good frame of mind to have been asked that question. Reflection and valuing. The first thing I valued in regards to making my decisions regarding this case was to, first of all, not falsely accuse the students. Students are valuable, and you don't want to go off half-cocked. I mean, I felt the approach to solving this issue was not best by choosing to question one or two kids. I wanted to preserve student integrity. Secondly, I valued Ms. Walker's feelings. I wanted her to understand that there are steps we can take to maybe diffuse the situation and avoid similar situations. Obviously, it must be done in a tactful, unaccusing manner. And lastly, I place value on the fact that policy must be followed in order to effectively resolve this issue. Preserving the integrity of the parents, the students, and the teacher and the Board of Education is the most valuable thing. Unresolved issues. Well, for me, the unresolved issues were who created the email website, what is the district policy, and why did Dr. Forbes not follow through earlier on Ms. Walker implementing strategies to create a better classroom climate. Component number 1, by planning to investigate this issue by using our district technology people, I felt that it was more ethical than asking or accusing the students. This also preserves the integrity of the community. Parents become upset when their children begin to get questioned. I also felt it was ethical to review the policy in regards to instruction and slander. Keeping policy updates as issues arise is much more effective than playing catch-up or possibly getting the district in trouble. Policy update preserves the integrity of the community. Component number 2 of category 5, by not calling students in the next day for questioning, I felt I was treating them fairly. It's best to have hard evidence before throwing accusations. It also takes away from their dignity when they've been falsely accused. I also feel I have treated Ms. Walker fairly and with dignity and respect by assisting her with a plan to improve the climate in her classroom. I also felt it was respectful to find a place for Miss Walker to stay the evening of the incident. She was frightened, and there was no need for her to drive 3 hours to feel safe. My last component for Category 5 was I demonstrated a personal and professional code of ethics by trying to assist Ms. Walker in improving classroom climate, by reviewing policy, and by finding hard evidence before stirring the hornet's nest with students. Professionally, the less mess created, the easier the problem solved. Thank you.